Hello.
Hello.
So I made you an alternate host, and Mitch Briggs is also an alternate host, so that whenever you guys join, you'll automatically come in, but everyone else will be in the waiting room, and then we'll just let them all in.
Cool. Can I turn my video off? Will that bother you?
If you want to, you can. I'm gonna try to encourage everyone to keep their videos on.
Okay. Let me put my background on then.
Okay, perfect. You should do the Bat Cave. Do the Bat Cave. It's so sick.
All right. Can you see it?
Yeah, it's good. Ooh, we have a bunch of people in the waiting room. About 30 people accepted the calendar invite, so hoping we have 5 people in the waiting room. Let's see, might be a small group. Okay, here's Mitch Briggs. Okay. Hello, Mitch Briggs. Hello, Mitch Briggs. There you are.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We have 8 people in the waiting room who I'm going to admit.
All right.
Cool. Let's do it. All right. Hello, everyone. Gibson, what's up? Hi. Okay, admit all. Welcome, everyone. All right, everyone's kind of rolling in here. All right. Okay. Wow, amazing background, Harish. Okay. We have quite the squad here. Hi, everyone.
Thank you.
So let's just, we still have people joining, sorry. Okay. Great. All right, people are coming in. Okay. Great. If everyone could just drop in the chat where you're dialing in from today, I think that could be a really fun way to kick things off. So I'm Chantal, and I'm dialing in from upstate New York. Jackie from Dallas, hello. Bay Area, Amy, hi. Matt, Indianapolis. Kate, Minneapolis. Austin, Texas. Trevor, amazing. Dawn in Kalamazoo. Okay, we have Asheville in the house. Samantha from Chicago. Gibson from San Diego. All right, we got the coast covered. We got the middle covered. We got the south covered. Maryland, Lauren, hello. We have India. Wow, it's late for you. Fantastic. All right. Well, we have a bunch of content for you today, and we actually were kind of hoping this could be more of a conversation than a webinar. So if you feel inspired to come off video and ask questions live, please feel free to do that. You can also just drop any questions that you have in the chat, and we'll be like keeping a solid eye on that to make sure that we don't miss anything. But yeah, I think we can take it away. So the inspiration for this session is obviously everyone is talking about AI today. And AI has really changed the way that we think about search from 2 different angles. One is the way that we create content, and then the other is the way that we search. And today we're going to be talking primarily about the way that AI has changed how we make content. And, so far, Google has said that it won't outright punish sites just for using AI. But there is always the caveat that Google does make updates when new technology comes onto the market that makes it easier to create content in mass. So they're not explicitly punishing people who use AI, but they will be punishing certain behaviors that lead to bad experiences for searchers. Eventually, they always kind of come around and do that. So, we've seen this happen many times throughout the last couple of decades. And you can't always predict what those things are, but I think we actually have a pretty good sense of how they will act based on learnings from the past algorithm updates, and also by looking at their current guidance on how they say they're reacting to AI. So what I'm going to do first is pull up, there's an article that Google has published about how they're going to react to AI generated content. I've actually dropped it in the chat, so you can check it out later. I'm sorry, I have a bunch of people joining still. Okay. So for those just arriving, hi Nia, I'm putting something in the chat. Oh my God, sorry, people are really just coming in here. Hopefully that's one of the last stragglers. Hi, Katie Baird. Okay, cool. So I'll share my screen and we can kind of talk through the high level here. All right. Can you guys see my screen? So this is the article that I just shared in the chat. And a few things that I want to call out that feel really important to me as part of this conversation are the following. One is this. They are always aiming to reward expertise, experience, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. So as long as your content, continues to uphold those pillars, you're in a good spot. Another thing that I really liked about this is here, when it comes to automatically generated content, the guidance is consistent as what it has been for years. Using AI to generate content to manipulate ranking and search results violates spam policies. So that's kind of like the main thing that they're looking for, anything that violates spam policies. They are going to continue their normal spam fighting efforts. And obviously they also recognize that not all AI created material is spam, obviously. So it sounds like they really do believe in the power of AI, essentially. But they'll continue to take the approach of trying to maintain a super high bar for information quality and overall helpfulness of content on search. So their recent helpful content update, like that all still applies to AI generated content. So Mitch Briggs, I kind of want to start transitioning to jumping into your content. Also, I just realized we did not introduce ourselves at all. I'm Chantal. This is Mitch Briggs. Mitch Briggs is our resident AI and SEO expert. So one thing that I think could be good to cover is based on what Google's guidance is, we have a bunch of ideas and notes, obviously, about what to do, but what should we avoid, in your opinion? What does spammy AI content really look like? Or machine generated content? We've seen some of this prior to ChatGPT even.
Yeah, and a lot of times you've seen it before, right? When you're doing your own searches. And we have to think too, when Google's addressing the market, right, or putting out these types of statements, it's not just talking to B2B SaaS companies or certain services or kind of the types of content marketing that a lot of us have been doing the right way for a long time. You're talking about the entire internet and all the content that's being out there, right? So if you think about certain sites, maybe things that do song lyrics, people that do, I saw one of the examples was it was just all the people that search for what celebrity is married to another celebrity. And so everyone would just auto-generate all these pages to basically cover their bases on every single search probability that's possible for those types of things, right? And it's just all auto-generated. It's all just these really thin question answer type landing pages
Mm-hmm.
that Google doesn't, is that really adding to the value of a searcher, or is it just something
Mm-hmm.
that's just getting spit out? So doorway pages has always been something that people try to do to manipulate those, where it's like it's different services. Let's say you do the same thing plus city name. So it'd be like,
Yeah.
you
SEO
know,
agency, city name.
yep.
Yeah.
If
Mm-hmm.
you just had a bunch of those things over and over and over again, and all you're doing is kind of rewashing content just to
Mm-hmm.
generate the page, just to try to show up in search, that type of activity that's done not by the tens, but by the hundreds and thousands of web pages, right? Maybe even in
Mm-hmm.
the millions in some cases. Um, that's the type of stuff they're really focusing on and trying to tell,
Mm-hmm.
unless you're a real authority on this, like, I mean, obviously Wikipedia is something like that. Unless you have a real breadth and depth of original, unique content and domain authority overall, you're going to have a hard time ranking with that type of tactic. Um, Whereas, if you look at like, okay, everyone says write good content, everybody says quality content, right? That
Mm-hmm.
is somewhat vague on purpose for their purposes, right? But what
Mm-hmm.
that can mean for a content marketer is looking at how could Google tell if something's quality, right? What is it looking for? We have
Mm-hmm.
a set of check marks in terms of SEO best practices, things that it looks for in a certain page. What is the on-page experience for that? But also the relationship between that page and the rest of your site, and your site and the rest of the internet, in terms of how things link together, how
Mm-hmm.
things are written, who's writing it, how original is it compared to other things that are out there. That's the
Mm-hmm.
type of stuff Google's putting in place with their own AI to better understand true language, instead of just a sentence with a keyword in it and another sentence with another keyword in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just gotten better and better at really understanding what's really being written at a major mass scale, and that's the type of technology that um, Google's kind of using AI to find the AI cheaters in terms of spam, and it's doing pretty okay job at that. But it is something that they've had to step up even more,
Mm-hmm.
because of how fast people can generate content,
Yeah.
um, and really fill these things in.
I would love it if all the attendees, if you could drop into the chat what you're hoping to use AI for in the near term, because I'm curious to learn if there are any repeating patterns, and maybe we can kind of focus on those concepts as we go. So what are you hoping to use AI for specifically with SEO? That's what we're talking about today, in the near term. If we could get a few ideas from the participants. Okay, cool. Rapid analysis of voice and tone for rough drafts. Great. Not sure. Content repurposing, not really content writing. Okay, creating briefs, thought starters, outlining and topic grouping. AI to explore other content topics that people are searching, keyword and content ideas, briefs. Okay, awesome. Speed up content creation and ideation. That is, yeah, I like that. That's kind of where my head is at too.
Yeah, all of these I would
Mhm,
consider extremely good use cases, right? In terms
mhm,
of the AI is a tool that you as a writer or you as a content marketer can utilize to make those types of activities more streamlined and even better than if a human went out and tried to do those same things. Less mistakes, probably more accurate. Um, Definitely like generating first drafts, editing those,
mhm,
huge value add versus staring at a blank Word doc. It can sometimes be very difficult when you're trying to write. Um, Even something like if you're in e-commerce, like writing product descriptions. If you just
mhm,
need 3 sentences and you have 10,000 products, if you're able to kind of feed and develop something that can auto generate some text, meta descriptions, those types of small pieces, um, are things that can help kind of flesh out your overall page to include more helpful information. That's the kind of stuff Google's going to reward, because you're aligning yourself more with Google's goals as well. You're
mhm.
creating a more complete experience for someone that's doing a search. And that's
Yeah.
if you're moving in that direction, you're really future proofing, your content in the way of using the tool in the right way instead of like kind of letting it loose and just auto publishing thousands and
Mm-hmm.
thousands of words every single day.
Mm-hmm. A lot of these examples are either like making one step of the process faster, like we saw briefs mentioned multiple times. I'm also seeing like a lot of ideation coming up, which like all of that is totally, you can still create a very valuable piece of content in Google's perspective, with AI basically handling one level of the steps for you.
I like the comment too about bridging the content gap. I think that's a
Mhm.
common thing we hear too, is I have limited resources in terms of writers. I know my audience is searching for a lot of this really good information that me as a business, me as a thought leader should be in front of educating that market. I
Mhm.
know what those terms are. The execution to build pages that kind of map to each one of those different topics is difficult. It's difficult to write a good library of information quickly that matches with your audience. So finding those gaps, whether it's a keyword or a topic, a cluster of keywords that you're trying to like round out, um,
Mhm.
that's the kind of thing that using AI to create content briefs, generate content, building those pages out, get ideas of what's related to what, all of that can really help you fill in that gap a lot faster than something that might take you months or years to actually do,
Mhm.
and a lot more cost if you had freelance writers educating them, all of that. Using AI to help you do that is where we've seen a lot of people be successful, and that really aligns with that expertise and authoritativeness of a site, right? Kind of asking yourself, how could a robot tell if this is a good site or not? It's going to look through all those different factors. Well, it looks
Mhm.
like they have a page on this topic, but do they have a page on this topic and this related and this related and this related? The one that has all that is going to be seen as more authoritative than the one
Yeah.
that just has a blog post from 2015 about the topic.
Yeah. And more expert and more experienced and more trustworthy, which is like the things that Google cares about, um, in terms of AI and all content. Um, I'm so curious, Amy, if you could elaborate, feel free to like turn on your audio. I'm curious about catching things that aren't in AP style and what significance that has for your business.
Sorry.
Okay. Hello.
We rely on a freelance team of writers, and
Mhm.
freelancers kind of come and go, right? Some will stick with you for
Mm.
a while, some roll on and off fairly quickly, or maybe their bandwidth is suddenly limited.
Mhm.
So then if you're in that situation, you end up having to do a lot of editing yourself
Mhm.
to make sure things are adhering to your style guide. And in our case, we primarily, of course, rely on AP style.
Mhm.
So being able, just as I use AI to rapidly analyze voice and tone from a new freelancer that I'm still not completely sure of, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
I'm planning to test out to see how well it can catch errors of things that don't align with AP style.
Mhm.
What I found so far is that if you give it pretty good direction, it can do a lot. But I
Mhm.
have not tested this exact use case yet.
Yeah. That seems like the kind of thing, I mean, Mitch, correct me if I'm wrong, but that seems like the kind of thing that Google would fully support kind of indefinitely, is like minor edits like that to make sure that grammar is correct or fitting a certain style. And then Amy, like, I think this idea could be applied to anyone, even if AP style doesn't matter to them. It's like anytime you have like onboarding or like seeing if a new freelancer is good, like that's a pretty universal experience that a lot of people on the call probably have also.
Yeah,
What
I
AI
agree.
do you
Those
prefer?
are those are all kind of going in the right direction, right? It's all about
Mm-hmm.
using this tool to make your content better, is instead of like, we do say scale, and I think scale is part of better, right? Because you're providing more related content, you're providing more expertise, you're kind of demonstrating more knowledge of what you want to satisfy with your customers and prospects visiting the site.
Mm-hmm.
But the quality should improve too, right? Less errors, less, um, you know, if you can find a tool that helps you with tone and kind of keeps everything aligned, um, really frees up time for content marketers to be more strategic and creative versus, putting so much time pen to paper on the true writing of an article. That's a good,
Nia has a good question.
yeah, I saw that
go
one
ahead,
too.
Rich.
Like, how much are we worried about redundancy? Like, I would honestly treat it as like anything that if I gave maybe just one small prompt to like a chat GPT or even some of the other tools out there and said, write me an article about, a small top, insert topic here. Whatever that generates, I would treat that raw content as almost like it's plagiarized, right? That's
Hmm.
something that everybody knows. That's something that everybody has. But I can start there. There's really good information in there. How can I turn that raw information into something that's more appropriate for my audience and has a little bit of my company or my services or my personal thought leadership take to it? So how do I kind of like add icing to this cake to make it a lot more, unique and looking and better in terms of helpfulness? The other thing to think about though is instead of maybe just one prompt where you're saying, write me 1,500 words about this one topic, think about it as something that you're kind of feeding AI section by section. So starting with an outline instead, and saying, okay, that my first topic is going to be this, and then I'm going to move into this, subheader, and then this subheader and this subheader. We've definitely found that like adding pieces together and like keeping the AI to like, all right, in the next section, continue on and talk about this, and then continue on in that. You're basically, the more unique the instructions and the brief that you've put together to instruct the AI on what to write, the more instructions you give it, the less redundant and less generic the content's going to be on the other side. It's very similar to like how you would create a creative brief and give it to a freelance writer. The more instructions, the more specific things you ask it to do, the more unique that content's going to come out. But I would definitely avoid the latter or the opposite of that, which is like, hey, write me a blog post on the 10 best places to visit in Florida, and then just post that to my site. I would consider that like everyone has that. That's not almost like you would treat it like plagiarism.
We've also, because we're developing an AI writing service, we've also noticed that if you ask it to rewrite each section multiple times, if you do that like twice or 3 times, the end result is way better than its first attempt. So the first attempt, I mean, this language is going to be totally wrong, but like, it's kind of like wrapping its head around like what you've just asked it to do. And then the more you ask it to improve, the better it gets every time. So if you think about it by section and then also kind of like have it rewrite each section multiple times, that we've found that has the best end result.
Yeah, and that's just our experience with these these are still
With
early
specifically,
tools.
yeah, OpenAI at least.
Yeah, OpenAI. There's other, I
Mhm.
mean, these things are going to change drastically over the year, to the point where it's going to not only just know the subject and the directions you're giving it, but eventually even who you are and what your preferences are and what your business is, what your site is, who your audience is. Like that kind of generative AI will start to be more prevalent, with some of, and it might be more wrapped in some of these more like advanced paid tools versus OpenAI, but they'll all be kind of evolving over time to get better and better. But I think as of where things stand now, with especially OpenAI, which is the most popular one, and which is what ChatGPT is built on, the more original your outline, the more original your instructions, the more, the better content you'll get out that you'll feel good about actually publishing as a unique piece.
Yeah, totally. Ashley has a good use case here. Speed up content creation and ideation for blog posts to serve multiple verticals. So Ashley, if you're able and willing, I would love to hear a little bit more context about that. And yeah, hi, Ashley. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, we have a product that serves a bunch of different verticals in the medical field. So we have to really target all different segments, whether that's dentistry, veterinary, optometry. So a lot of the use cases for our product are the same, but the audience is very different. So being able to like use the right language and tone for those audiences is something that we're using. We're actually using Jasper right now
Yeah, they're great.
to really customize that language so that it matches the audience's needs.
Can you give an example?
So and obviously just even changing languages from dentists to doctors, from we'll talk about office managers, and their needs are a little unique. And then when we get to veterinary, I mean, we're talking about patients versus pets and things like that. So it just helps streamline that process a little bit. We are down as team member currently. So that's, something that we've been facing. And so having this has kind of helped us along, and gotten us a little bit further than we could have gotten without anyone. So I think that's really what we're trying to do. And we're just sort of getting into it, right? Like we've focused mostly on dental and my company, but we have all these other verticals we can go into, but haven't had the time to create the content. So using something like Jasper to really expand our team virtually, if you will, has been our use case.
Are you editing the content much after you create it in
Yes.
Jasper? Okay.
Yes,
I would love to hear more about
significantly.
that. Yeah, because our kind of like working hypothesis is you use AI, it creates the content, and then you edit the crap out of it, and that's what you publish. But I would love to learn more about how you guys are doing that.
Yeah, we edit a lot, and very much the way that you guys are talking about, like having rewriting section by section has been one of the ways we do that. The other thing we do is we try and insert unique content into the Jasper created content. So we'll use like testimonial quotes, or small snippets of statistics, which we actually will sometimes use Jasper to find those statistics for us, and then sort of layer that in, so that it feels a little more along the lines of that helpful and useful case that Google asks for, is like how to make sure that your content is helpful. Just adding those little details, I think, makes it a little stronger.
Wow. That's awesome.
That is awesome.
Yeah. Have you noticed maybe it's too soon, but have you noticed that it's working, or like, how is it going?
It's just getting started. So I can't say it's working per se. We're very, very small B2B company. So our web traffic is like teeny tiny. But we're hopeful that this will give us a leg up, like I said, because we are trying to address these multiple verticals, and it can be a real challenge.
Cool.
Yeah, that's cool to think about. Yeah, industry verticals, right? Where you're essentially saying the same thing but differently to a different audience. The other challenge we see a lot is there's a product that might live among many categories.
Right.
Some people might call it project management. Other people call it task management. Other people are searching for, something very similar. It's all the same essential problem that you're trying to solve, but it lives kind of in these different, especially in tech companies, that people call one thing and the other, and it's all really the same thing, or at least you want to have that conversation with that same person. So how do you kind of change the page and the language? Instead of calling it, task management on one, you call it project management on the other. It's not really rewriting from scratch everything. It's some more of a template that you can kind of reuse and repopulate. I think the other interesting thing that popped in my head as you were talking was, like, when we talk about helpful and we talk about good quality and we talk about experience, it's not just the words themselves that matter in terms of the page, right? Think about the page itself being helpful and quality. So long form text and the words on the page are definitely a huge part of that, right? If someone were to read that, you want it to be helpful and help them. But also think about what else is included on the page itself and the layout of the page that makes it helpful. Are you linking to other related stuff? Do you have social proof and quotes and video on the page? Do you have maybe some helpful images or graphs? Maybe there's, something in bullet point form. Maybe there's, a download. So if you think about that entire page, because that's how Google will look at it too, page by page, and what's on the page and what are all those little elements. When you think about quality, when you think about good experience and helpfulness, think of the page holistically and all of its elements. Long form copy, all of that is part of that experience. Make sure there's just something for everybody and something for, you know, the person that may not want to read the entire article, but may want to watch the video or click on the thing. Just the more you can kind of think of your pages as the entirety of that page, even the design and layout, all go into factoring what's considered quality and helpful. So
Is that what yours are
the
like, Ashley? Are they like landing pages or is it more like blog content?
It's more blog content, but
Mhm.
but we treat them like we're definitely part of like the whole philosophy of like pillar pages and then all
Yeah.
these ancillary pages around it.
Mhm.
And so that's where it requires a lot of content generation to build that out sufficiently.
Mhm.
And without a team member, it's been a challenge. So we're able to kind of like pick it up with this
Yeah.
technology.
So you're creating the sort of like spoke content that's supporting the pillar. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, that's a fantastic use case too, because then the main point of that piece of content is to be supportive and not necessarily to be like the one that's number one in the search result.
Right.
So that's actually I think that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing.
Of course.
Amy has a great question. We can crowdsource and then we can let Mitch kind of share a little bit more of his thoughts on what needs to be true about content in order to be sort of like safe from any algorithm updates that will ultimately be in reaction to all this AI content. Amy's question is curious if anyone has tried using an AI solution to generate supporting infographics. Super interesting question. Anybody? I have not.
I know.
Written poems.
Yeah, our CEO, when they, I think it was our last like quarterly meeting,
Mhm.
did a lot of AI generated graphics just to like
Images. Yeah.
images and things. It
But
was kind
not a
of
full
but not a
infographic.
full like, yeah, chart or anything. That would be,
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea, especially if you don't have an in-house graphic designer or a budget for
Mhm.
graphics. Sometimes it's, you just want something that illustrates a point, even if it's not a full on, you know, professionally designed infographic, but if it's like I need a green circle and a red circle because I was talking about that in the content, like I just want that,
Hmm.
that quick and easy stuff to help kind of illustrate a point. Use them in PowerPoints, but um, I think they could be tremendously helpful to help break up walls of text and have more visualizations. Um, I haven't used a lot of those tools though personally. I don't know what like the best one is for
Mm-mm. Me neither.
actually creating them. So I'm curious what others might be using to create those graphics.
Yeah. Yes, Nia, this is being recorded, so I can share this with you after. Cool. Okay, Mitch, I would love we can get into kind of like the meat of the content that you've put together for the day. We've covered a lot of it, but maybe we can start by talking about actually, you can decide. Is there something that you want to cover specifically?
I was just trying to think about, I think one of the big questions that we get a lot is around like, can Google detect AI content? And if it does
Mhm.
can detect it, am I going to be penalized? That kind of thing. Even with the helpful
Mhm.
content update that was, last fall, same kind of questions of like, how am I going to know if everyone's has this fear of the penalty, right? Or like Google's going to, dock me in some way.
Mhm.
Um, that, I'm going to create all this content and then Google's going to change its mind and we're all going to, like traffic's going to tank. I think that's everyone's kind of
Mhm.
nightmare when thinking about investing in this and
Well, yeah,
building
I
this
mean,
out.
that's the worst case scenario.
Yeah. So
That's why we're having this webinar, trying to
and
avoid that.
yeah, and that's where I'm trying to like, I know that I would love to just have it be like one sentence that says like do this and not that and
Mm,
you're fine. But I think that it is the spectrum. And
mhm.
on the one side of the spectrum is just complete spam, you know, um, auto generation. Because it's a keyword, I'm going to create a content about it. Because it's a keyword, I'm going to
Mhm.
create content, hundreds of pages a week, just spamming it out there with no real information architecture or no real design. You're just like trying to get Google to rank you.
Mhm.
That would be the spammer. On the other side is the like, let's ignore Google. Let's not, worry about SEO at all. Let's just create good content written by thought leaders, and
Mhm.
we will win the day that way, eventually, because we have just really great human content. That's kind of like the purist on that side, right? And oftentimes they do create great content. It's often not very discoverable. It doesn't rank well. It's not
Mhm.
written with, what people are searching in mind. It's just written based off,
Yeah.
their own industry expertise. I think what wins is in the middle, right? Which is, I understand what people are searching for. I'm using that to create my clusters and that pillar and spoke strategy. I'm going to use the keywords as part of, I'm going to echo back what people are searching in my content. I'm not going to ignore that, because I need to speak with, you know, dentists differently than optometrists versus,
Mhm.
they're all searching in different ways. So I need to have specific pages for that. I'm going to use AI to help me do that, in terms of whether it's building an outline or building a summary or transcribing a podcast that someone was on. I'm going to use AI to make that more efficient and higher quality over time, and link it together in a way that's organized and makes sense, that shows I'm an expert and I know how these things are related. Um, that's, I think, the most future proof you can be, because Google has these dials that they can move up and down in terms of what matters, what doesn't. Um, and the more of those boxes you're checking off when creating your strategy, creating your content. So we always get asked like, "Oh, does this matter anymore? Does that matter anymore?" The answer is usually always like, it depends. Um, and it does matter if it's improving the quality of the experience and improving the quality of your website. And so having little things like, is it in the sitemap? Is it my H1, H2? That stuff matters, because at any point, Google can decide that those things matter more than before or less than before. It's always making updates to its algorithm. It's always retraining its systems to, um, and the folks that are on the very extremes are the ones that see the extremes in terms of traffic up and down. What something might work because you're spamming it, and then all of a sudden it doesn't.
Mhm.
Um, that kind of hybrid model, where you're not just looking at keywords and saying spit it all out, and you're not totally ignoring these things and just writing from the heart. You're kind of in that perfect balance where you're considering SEO best practices, understanding how people are searching, organizing your content really well, and creating good experiences that match up with how people search. And that's always just been very difficult to do well,
Mhm.
because there's so many little things to do, the writing, the edit. I mean, and I think uh, AI has a great opportunity to make a lot of those things more of a workflow, more of a process, and one that can be scaled faster than before. So it's pretty exciting. I think it levels the playing field for a lot of smaller teams, I think, that can be more capable of generating good long form content and helpful information. Um, but it still requires that kind of planning and thoughtfulness of how to execute it, and
Mhm.
not be tempted to do it in too spammy of a way, because that's the more on the extremes you are, the more risk there is that you're kind of at Google's mercy.
Yeah. One thing that you mentioned sort of a few minutes ago that I think would be good to dive into a little bit more is what we've talked about in the past as if you're a brand and you're ultimately selling a product, your content needs to have both facts and your spin on the facts, basically, or your like brand's perspective on the facts. Like we're not just news outlets.
Mhm.
And we're also not like doing creative writing. But like we're selling a thing and we have a perspective on like why it's better than alternatives. And
Mhm.
so when you create content, you have like information for people and also your perspective. And AI is good for getting the facts and getting the sort of like baseline level of information, but can probably never replicate like your company's perspective on certain issues, or like why, I don't even know, like what's an example for Demandwell? It's like, why do we believe tech-enabled services is a better business model for solving the SEO problem than like agencies or whatever? It's like, will OpenAI be able to answer that? Probably not. But we can. And so, yeah.
Yeah, it's like I always say online brochures don't rank well. They might convert well. They might
Mm,
be great to send somebody as a link for them to learn about your company, right? Because they're marketing focused content. They're focused on, hoping somebody comes to your homepage and then consumes everything from there, right? But they're not constantly discovered. They're not an inbound engine. They do their job of being an online brochure. The other side of that is too, which is just a full content farm of like content that is so generic and not helpful, but it's comprehensive and has it not even if it does attract, it's not going to convert them to interact with your actual business. So again, that hybrid of, like you're saying, I have helpful content for those that are looking for it. I have my own unique spin on it. I'm not necessarily selling you too hard, but there are opportunities to have that person engage deeper into your site. And so the more nets you have, that's when you can kind of really turn your site from an online brochure to just a 24/7 inbound engine. Is you're
mhm,
constantly there when people are searching and seeking information. You're answering that question and being helpful and telling them, things to consider, what to look out for, how to better understand this. Do you want to talk to an expert? All that fun stuff that hopefully
mhm.
gets them filling out forms and becoming, leads for you.
It almost sounds like Harish, I hope I'm saying your name correctly, is doing this. In the chat, he said, I'm currently using content from AI tools as a base reference to develop more expert content. So if you're out there, Harish, and if you can give us some context, would love to hear.
Yeah, basically what I do is I try to get some understanding because I'm not a content writer myself.
Mhm,
But it allows me to get some basic idea and helps me to kickstart with writing content. So apart from the research that I do from SEO tools or manually doing some research on search engines, it also gives me some clarity on what are the topics that I have to cover and not to cover. So that's where basically I feel AI tools is very useful for us SEO persons.
Yeah,
So
that's great. I think that's the right way to think about it, right? Is as a tool to help you do better and a tool to help, do
yeah.
things faster as well. So that's
And
awesome.
one more advantage it gives me is that I don't have to, wait for a content writer to provide me the content. So if there is any urgent need or necessity that I have to publish a content as soon as possible, then that's where it's really helpful. Apart from being, giving me the ideas of uh, creating a brief.
Hmm.
So I just use the brief that content that it creates, and I just build up on it. And then without waiting for content writer, I just write it on my own and make it live so that I save some time as well.
Which tool are you using currently to generate the content?
So yeah, I just use ChatGPT alone, which itself I feel is sufficient as of now, and which is free as well. So since I'm an individual contributor, so I obviously will go for free tools. So yeah,
Yeah,
ChatGPT is the one that I'm currently using, and it alone is giving me sufficient information. So I didn't have any necessity to go for other tools and try it out because ChatGPT is giving me more than enough information. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's great. I think there's a lot of them popping up. I know Grammarly is doing one, and even HubSpot has one. That's if you use the HubSpot CMS, you can tap right in. It taps into OpenAI as well. Um, just a lot. I think the one that we've utilized is OpenAI as well,
Mhm.
to feed our content into. So, and I think ChatGPT just ChatGPT 4 just launched. So
Yes.
like that, it's
Yes, it
already like
did. Yeah.
it's already like a new version of it. So it's it's already way better than the previous one is what everyone's saying, but I don't have enough data. It came out like 22 hours ago, but
Yeah, we saw, or the thing I was reading today, it sounds like you could do like collaborative editing and like things with it that just sound very human to me in kind of a creepy way. Uh, okay, cool. Well, if
yeah.
anyone uses ChatGPT 4 and loves it, send me an email. I love to hear your thoughts. What else should we cover, Mitch, with everyone before we wrap up on what to keep in mind as we create content so that when the next algorithm update comes, we're in a good spot?
Yeah, I would just say make sure you're just staying up to date with the changes, right? Things are going to start happening pretty quickly. I
Mhm.
think Google not only may change its guidance in
Mhm.
terms of more clarity. I don't think they're going to fully reverse and say like if you use content at all, it's over. You know, there's just no way they can do that. The toothpaste is out of the tube.
Mhm.
They're
And they
they're
need to
gonna
support it because they're scared of being replaced. So
right. They have
yeah.
they're going to support it. They're going to figure out better quality signals, right? And that can mean a lot of those things on the dial that that they have in terms of factors, right? They might be giving more weight to how things link. They might be giving more weight to what sites link back to you as a sign of expertise. All of those things can be dialed up, dialed down over time. They're not going to specifically say what they're doing. They're always going to have more general guidance and use words like helpful and expertise. That's always going to be their mission, is to connect people that are searching with the best thing. So if as long as you're continuing to try to do that in a good faith way, I think you're always going to
Mhm.
be in the clear from huge swings in the algorithm.
Yeah.
Um, so
It's
keep paying attention to their not only what they're putting out, but also what they do with their own search engine. Um, that can help kind of change the content game as well, in terms of what types of content we need to produce, how that actually shows up in search,
Mhm.
the types of moves that Bing made. I think Google's going to have to respond to that as well, um, and come up with its own AI assisted search engine, more chat style for certain types of queries. I think it's going to affect more than others. Um, but I think most B2B, even B2C spaces are somewhat always going to have a large amount of people seeking information about. Um, it's more the really, I think, either a combination of the very complex types of queries and the very simple types of queries will be more easily answered by like a chat style. Whether it's like, what is this? Or what temperature
yeah.
is it? Versus like, put together a grocery list and help me plan an 8-course meal. People might use ChatGPT for that instead of doing multiple Google searches to like put all that information together.
Yeah. I want to go a little bit deeper on one thing that you mentioned, which is like, there's kind of like a good and a bad side of this, where Google always does tell you exactly what it's optimizing for, actually, but they use incredibly vague language. So they actually are giving you the keys to the kingdom in some ways. Right? Like there's that article about how they're handling AI generated content. But to your point, the language is really, it's vague. So there's a lot of wiggle room there. I don't really know. I don't have a specific point in mind to be made about this, but I just think it's a blessing and a curse. And I think of it
Yeah.
actually more as a blessing because they tell you what they care about and then you can act accordingly, basically.
Yeah, we should put together a cheat sheet of like when Google says this, they probably mean
What
this.
does it mean?
'Cause
Yeah.
there's certain words that they have used throughout the last, 15 years that I've been
Yeah.
watching them put out these types of releases.
Hmm.
When they say quality, they mean um, essentially signals of quality, right? What are the signals of quality that they can measure
Hmm.
and actually put into their algorithm? So like even things like how fast does your site load? The things around core web vitals. That's a part of quality as well. If I
Hmm.
if I write a article about something and Chantal does the same thing on her website and hers loads a second slower than mine, I have a better quality experience.
Yeah.
If I have video and you don't, I have a better quality experience. The words can all be the same.
Hmm.
But thinking about what does quality mean and how could a robot measure quality when comparing it to the rest of the entire internet, and do that every day. Um, same with helpful and unique, right? Those are all kind of the same word. The other
Yeah.
part they'll say often is like, we don't have a problem with that, or we can tell what's happening. There's a difference between Google, yes, they can tell what this page is about, or they can index it, versus following best practice to make it easy and faster and better for Google to understand and more clear. Um,
Hmm.
so using vague language in like a title tag or something like that, sure, Google can write their own title tag and understand what your page is about without you optimizing a tag, right? That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it.
Hmm.
Um, you don't have to use an H1 to have as your title because Google figures what it was at the top of the page. Google can figure it out.
Yeah. It was an H
But
something at the top of the page.
right, but
Yeah.
that doesn't mean you shouldn't follow the best practice of
Mm.
having one H1 at the top of your page as like the header.
Yeah.
So there's all those like little things that you can kind of, I think is the fun part about being an SEO is like interpreting these things. Everybody has an opinion on it, which is because we
Hmm.
never really know, right? Nobody knows the
Yeah.
actual. But it is fun to discuss and think about.
And to your point, it's not like Google's understanding is black and white. It's like we interpret in a certain way as individuals, but then also like Google can interpret things that are close, but not all the way. And
Right.
yeah.
It's like designing any system. Your intention is to do
Mhm.
that. One thing that's interesting about in our demand wheel platform, we have something called a priority score, and we have our own, mini algorithm that feeds that.
Mhm.
And it's a combination of search volume, intent of the words that we like, whether or not you rank for it today, um, and so it's looking at like that and like keyword difficulty. As SEMrush has these same things, right? They're these little mini algorithm where the intent of the algorithm is to serve the best keywords that will make the most impact to what you're trying to do as a business first, and then rank them in some sort of order. It's not a perfect algorithm, right?
Mhm.
There's certain things you could give more weight to, and you could argue about what the best way to do that is. But just imagine trying to do that with every single page on the internet every single day. It's a tough task,
Chaos. Yeah.
and it's going to get tougher when now everyone can write a 1,500 word article in 1 second
Yeah,
and publish it. So as
totally.
the amount of content starts to double, triple, quadruple, maybe within this year.
I know.
Um,
I'm just realizing like maybe we're asking the wrong question. It's not about like how do you future proof against the algorithm? It's like how do you make your content stand out in a world where now everyone's content can hit the like high performance thresholds that we've all been like grinding to achieve. um Now that it's easier than ever, like what does that mean? The Paul Retzer, his last name is so hard to say. Last week when we were chatting with him, he was talking
Mhm.
about how having actually very human unreplicatable content involved is what he thinks the best way is, like having a video at the top that explains what you're thinking. You still need the text at the bottom if you want that page to rank from an SEO perspective, but like
Mhm.
Yeah, it's going to be super interesting to see what happens.
Yeah. And Matt, I like your question too. I'm not sure the exact answer of that, but that is something Paul talked about last week as well too,
Mhm.
like generative AI and
Mhm.
stuff that is not just a generic one that everybody's asking the same questions to, but one where you can like actually, feed it. Hey, here's the last 100 blog posts I wrote. So when I ask you to write blog posts, write them similar to what I've done in the past, or like
Yeah, in my
pick up
voice.
pick up my tone, pick up my
Yeah.
voice. I think that's going to have to be, this is just total guess because I'm not really sure, but
Mhm.
I think that's going to have to be another type that's like contained in software or some other ability to do that.
Mhm.
Because right now what exists is really just language models. It's not like scraping the internet every day and like consuming.
Mhm.
That's not what the AI is doing. It's just making predictions based on inputs and outputs via these like really complex neural networks and language models. I don't even know if I'm using those words right, but it is like there is a future state where like you can have your own AI that you've developed to help, not,
Mhm.
or you're kind of closing off
Your
the
own
data.
writer based on what you've given it,
Right.
him or her. Do we want to
Uh,
say it?
that might
Them?
exist in some
Yeah.
state. I don't know if it's
Mhm.
like what products are doing that. I think some of
Mhm.
those AI writers that exist today could have that capability, but I think that's where Paul last week
Mhm.
said it was going in
Mhm.
the future.
Mhm. Cool. Cool. Well, I think we should probably start wrapping up. So any last questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. If not, thanks everyone for joining us. I do want to share, we do have, Demandwell does have a AI content service where if you want to check it out, I'll put a link in the chat and you can learn more about it by talking with the salesperson. So let me see. Let's see. And then we have another weekly workshop next week. Date and time to be determined, but I'll shoot an email to everyone who joined us today. If you want to join us again next week, we'll be talking about not AI, but keyword research and building a smart keyword strategy. And we'd love to see you there. So thank you very much, Mitch Briggs, for the time.
Yeah, thanks
Thanks
everybody.
everyone for joining. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Cheers.